Tonight at 10, the unfolding catastrophe in Afghanistan, where a shortage of food and aid is causing terrible suffering. The United Nations says the situation is fast becoming the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world. We report on the families forced to take desperate measures, including selling their babies to buy food.
Another person came up to one of our team and asked if we'd like to buy their child. The desperation and the urgency of this situation is hard to put in words.
The situation in Afghanistan has become markedly worse in the 2 months since the Taliban seized power. Also tonight, millions of workers stand to benefit from a rise in the national living wage to £9.50 an hour. We report from Burnley on the efforts to deal with the increase in mental health issues in the wake of the pandemic. And the UN warns that greenhouse gases are at record levels just days before the climate change conference in Glasgow.
And coming up in the sport on the BBC News Channel. Sobering scenes for Scotland, thrashed by Afghanistan in their first Super 12 match at the Men's T20 World Cup.
Good evening. We start with the terrible plight of millions of people in Afghanistan, where a deadly combination of a lack of food and a shortage of international funding is threatening to create the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world. The United Nations says the country, where the Taliban seized power 2 months ago, is heading for catastrophe. The UN estimates that around 23 million people, over half the Afghan population, face an acute shortage of food. That is a rise of nearly 40% since April this year. And international aid, which has been keeping the economy afloat, has all but dried up as world leaders consider their approach to the Taliban regime. As the BBC's Yogita Limai reports, some families have reached the point where they're selling their children to make ends meet. A report from the western city of Herat contains distressing detail from the start.